Welcome to the Journey 2020. I'm Charles Morris. Happy to be here with you coming off the weekend, like always. Monday must be somewhere around 7 p.m. That we've been doing this since 2013. As you know, the Journey 2020 started with Dr. John Robinson, the clinical psychologist here in the area, who came to me in the summer of 2013 and said, Charles, I have this idea and I want to talk about our journey. And we just added the 2020 because that was the only thing at that time available as far as a website, because everything else was used up. So I said, what if we just call it the Journey 2020? And that's what it's been since the summer of 2013. And as Dr. Robinson would say, it's from me to you and from me to you, from us together, so we can rise to a higher level. So that's what we try to do. I kind of screwed that up a little bit, but that's what I do. But anyway, I'm Charles Morris, and we've been coming to you for a period of time, and we talk about some serious stuff and not so serious stuff. And for those who know that I do a lot of fishing, I'm excited because I'm coming off a great weekend. Okay, and let me tell you about my weekend. I'm going to expose how long I've been around. Um, this past Saturday, uh, over 2 months ago, I came up with this idea with an old girlfriend of mine, actually one of my first girlfriends. Okay, I was 7 years old. She was the girl next door. She was six. So she was my first girlfriend when I was like seven. She was six, and she's really like a sister to me because we've been friends all these years, and we've always stayed in contact. And so I said, let's call the old gang together. So about 2 months ago, I said we're gonna give them plenty time and let's come together. So some people that I grew up with that we had not seen each other, all of us together since the 70s, right? And so this past weekend we all met at our friend's house, and what we used to do is we used to put our money together. We're like 9, 10, 11 years old, and as kids we would put our money together, and then we would go in her backyard and build a little fire, get the clothes hanger, put some hot dogs on the fire, and we have our little weenie roast. So I built this flyer, and the flyer was with some old pictures of all of us back in the day, and on it it says "Bring your own hanger," which means we're gonna have hot dogs. And back then we used to have Kool-Aid. So on the flyer it has the thing of Kool-Aid, and it says Kool-Aid will be served. And yes, so us coming together, hadn't seen each other all these years, and I think nobody said no because I think at this age we kind of all realize, like, you know what, we need to see each other because there ain't no telling what tomorrow gonna bring, if tomorrow gonna come at all. So I think that's where we are now. So, you know, saying prayer together, reminiscing, and it's one of those things that um, you think of these people every day of your life, and believe it or not, I'm gonna bring on a guest, and when I saw the flyer, it kind of made me think of those moments because even though she don't know I'm going to talk about this, but it made me think of this right here. When I think of things as when you get older and you don't realize it at the time how precious these moments are, because as you grow, supposedly you become wiser, supposedly. And so what happens is you go through these moments and you have these times and you don't realize how precious they are. And so when I thought about it, and I'm leading up to what I wanted to talk with my guest about as well, was this right here. I was standing there and I called my aunt, who's really the only one left in that group of my father, the sister, and his sisters and siblings, my grandmother in that group. So there's only one left. My grandmother had five kids, and my father, there was five of them. They all have passed away, and the only one that is left is my aunt, who was married to my uncle. And I called her and I said, Aunt Esther, do you have grandmother's homemade recipe for her pancakes? Because as a little kid, I used to wake her up at like 11 o'clock at night as a little kid with that little, "Grandmother, will you go and make me some pancakes?" And she would get up every time and go make these pancakes like I've never tasted before from scratch. And these pancakes would just melt in your mouth. Now, you may go to Denny's or IHOP or Perkins and they may serve the pancake, but her pancakes didn't taste like that. Okay, it was these pancakes that just like melted in your mouth. And now the recipe is gone forever, that no one knows where that recipe comes from. Or when you sit there and then you realize some things because my mother and my father have passed. Then when you get older, then you think of all these things that you wish that you have asked, but you didn't think of it. And so I'm like, man, there's so much now that you're in a different place that you said, man, I got a million questions that can't be answered. Which leads us up to our guest today. And I want to thank her so much for taking the time to come on um, the Journey 2020, because I got a text from a friend, my friend Chet, and he sent me this book. I mean, this text about the author and book signing. I was like, oh, okay, because a few weeks ago, I had someone on who was talking about those who want to write a book, and on many occasions, I have talked about the fact that there's a book in all of us. There's a story to be told, and we don't realize the similarities, but we're all kind of intrigued because we all kind of share things and be like, yeah, I said something in church um, about 3 weeks ago, and there was like 8 people stood up and go, yeah, that was me too, because the church was recognizing me for something, and I got up there and I said something about some of my struggles, and people, oh yeah, I was going. So we don't realize, because we're kind of secret and private about our stuff, and then you come to realize a lot of us share the same stories, which somebody said something, because I'm kind of like all over the place. But one of the things that was kind of connected us growing up in the times that we did was that in reality we had 3 channels. We only had 4, because I'm including the PBS. So out of the 3 channels, our country was connected because the similarities was we only had 3 channels. So we pretty much could could identify, because, and I'm not ashamed to say this, and this is the absolute truth. This is the truth. As God is my witness. When I was about 12 years old, if you had asked me Sunday through Saturday the TV schedule on any 3 of the channels from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m., I could have told you what was on every channel without even thinking about it twice. I was the TV guy. But anyway, joining me is Miss Sharon Fletcher Jones. How you doing, Miss Jones? I don't know if you got a
I'm
thing. Oh, I don't know if you got a thing going on. but it's Mrs. Jones. How you doing?
I'm well, but I have to correct you because I am not Mrs. Jones.
Oh,
I
really?
am really I'm Miss Jones.
Oh, well,
Um,
well. I meant,
I,
but hold on. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. No, I get it. I get it. But you know what I'm talking about. Come on now. Okay. All right.
I
Go
know.
ahead. Go. Fix it, girl. Fix
Okay.
it. Fix it. Fix it.
Let me
Fix it.
jump in here really quickly. Jump in. My first time ever, and first and only time ever in Paris. I get into a cab, and what is playing? Me and Mrs. Jones. It's playing on the radio.
So.
I'm sorry, in London, in a cab in London.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Um, but let me just tell you that I've been a victim of identity theft twice
Oh, really?
on just Sharon Jones. So,
I can, but see, I
and
can only see. I can only imagine, because see, if your name is Williams, Smith,
uh-huh,
or
yes,
Jones,
yes.
they everywhere. So
Well,
if it's a Smith, a Williams, a Jones, everywhere.
Everywhere. They're all my cousins, each and every one of them. But
Right.
yeah, so I carry my daughter's name, my only child. I was married when I had her. Her name is Fletcher. And
Mhm.
then I carried my mother's maiden name, which is Jones.
Okay.
So I honor the two most important women in my life with my name. And I kind of hold back the scammers and the would-be identity thieves. So
Oh.
that is
Okay.
why I was upon being called Sharon Fletcher Jones. But for me and you, Charles, it's just Sharon. It's just Sharon.
So I just be like, "What's up, SJ? What's up? How you doing, SJ? How you doing? How you
That's
doing?" Well,
a lot
listen.
of people call
Mhm.
me Fletch. A lot of folks call me Fletch. My church family, they call me Fletch.
Oh. Okay. Now, where are you from originally?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I love telling people that I am from Portsmouth, Virginia. And let me
Oh.
just share, yeah, Missy Elliott, Wanda Sykes, Michael Vick, Timberland,
Okay. So
Loretta Williams.
are you a Virginia Tech fan?
Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, you said Michael Vick.
Well, yeah, I'm a Michael Vick fan. I was
Oh,
a
okay.
Michael
I
Vick
got you.
fan.
Okay. Okay.
I'm still an Allen Iverson fan. I was an
Okay.
AI fan.
Okay. Okay.
I was
Well,
AI
I
fan.
know he's from Virginia. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I got a Allen Iverson story, but let me give you the short version because it tickles me
lay
every
it
time I
off.
think of it. No. 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 When Allen Iverson was at his prime, when he was like in the news
Yeah.
and they was like trying to talk to his mama, I mean talk to his mother, and it just tickled me because they was following her around and they were trying to get the story something about AI and the girlfriend or wife or whatever it was, and it was just so funny to me when she turned around and she said AI ain't this and AI this and AI is this, and I looked at her and she made me think of my mother because no matter how popular I would have ever become, my mother would have never addressed me as AI. She would have been like, Charles this, Charles that, go in there and wash the dishes. I could have never been AI to my mother. So that's why that to me just cracked me up because I was trying to vision my mother being that person. And my mother would have been like, no, my son in there washing my dishes. Ain't no AI.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm
I
like,
don't care.
well, no, no, ain't no AI up in here. Are you talking about Charles? No, well, right now he's upstairs vacuuming the carpet. That's who I would have been to my mom. So that always
Exactly.
tickled me.
People calling them AI.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. That's hilarious. I grew up like you, Charles. I grew up like you. My mother would have, I mean, and don't let her get mad. She would call everybody's name because
Hmm.
I'm the oldest of five. So
Oh.
she would call everybody's name and then tell us, you know who I'm talking about.
Exactly, exactly. And then yeah, when especially you can tell when they're upset when they're a little older and they call three or four names before they get to yours.
That's right.
Right. When they ticked off, when they mad, they so mad they just start calling names and eventually they get to you.
Yeah,
You come here.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
you,
that was my house.
you
That
know
was
who I'm
our
talking
house.
to.
Yeah, that was
Well,
our house.
but
Sure.
how did you end up in Florida?
Okay. I fell in love.
Oh, no, you
Yeah.
didn't. No, you didn't.
Yes, I
Really?
did. I came
Okay,
really. I came
okay.
here.
You got hooked.
Um, I got hooked. I upset my entire life and moved here. because I believed in love, and I still do believe in love. Just that guy's gone.
Well, see, you should have got you a puppy, but go ahead. That's some love
I
right there, baby. That's some love. You know, you get your little kitten or puppy. But yeah, go ahead. Cause see,
well,
they
let
they
me, let
they
me
will love you back. Yeah, but go ahead.
well, I can say right now that I am in a very, very loving and mutually satisfying relationship, and I'm happy that I stayed in Florida even
Okay.
after my divorce. Yeah,
Okay. So how long were you married?
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Legally,
Oh,
technically, 13 years.
13 years.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Oh. Okay. All right. So I can tell we're gonna leave that one alone. We're gonna leave that alone. We're gonna leave that one
Well,
alone. We're gonna leave
let's leave that alone. Let's talk about my book.
it. Okay. Okay. So, um, there, I truly, I would just talk. It's funny too because recently I was just having a conversation with someone that was sharing with me that they was married for 38 years.
Mm,
They was married for 38 years, and they're now going through a divorce. And so we're having the
yeah,
conversation. Yeah, yeah. So we're having the conversation. So I was like, wow, I really feel bad because unfortunately, for whatever reason, you're saying that you guys can't work it out in the investment and all of that. You say you got 3 kids and so on and so forth. And so when she was talking about it and she's so spiritually sounded, I said, you should write a book. She's like, yeah, because there's so many people that would be able to relate because people don't understand. Like I was saying, we all have so many similarities that we don't understand how similar we are and the things that we share. Growing up, um, just looking back, and then that whole thing that somebody shared with me recently made sense about how so many things were similar because we only had 3 channels, and we
three
pretty
channels.
much
That was it.
right, and we pretty much listen to the same music. And I'm talking about the culture. Black people,
Hmm.
most of us, we
Yes,
we listen to the same music, and we pretty much watch the same shows. So we could kind of relate more so to each other and had a better understanding, and there was a connection and not so divided and separate from each other. You know,
absolutely.
and so
Yeah, I
there's
agree.
a connection there, and I don't, and I'll say this, that I think that the timing of being born at this time, because nothing against the millennials, but when I reflect on it, we, at least my age, I can go back to when radio first started, because when I went to college we covered radio because my major was communication, radio, and television. So there was the understanding of the whole thing that started as far as radio, and how the radio used to be the television, and how all these stories and all these things that went from radio, and then when television started, because a lot of those stories and radio programs translated over to television. And I mean, you talk about HD TV and all the other stuff. You, I'm comfortable sitting there watching a black and white program because I grew up in it. So seeing something in black and white, like, oh Lord, what is that? That's not strange to me. But the people that played the part that built up to what movies are and television, them. If you go up and talk to the
Hmm.
millennials, say, "Do you know who John Wayne is? Do you know about the Duke?" And they go, "Well, Duke. Well, who the heck is John Wayne? Who is Lucille Ball? And all these people. Do you know who Perry Mason? Shows that you grew up. Wagon Train and da da da. You know, Bonanza and all these shows um, that you knew that made us, that we know television and radio to be. you know about these things. And it's
Exactly.
right, and it's part of you, and I can have a conversation with you about, well, on Saturday night I used to watch Mannix with my grandmother, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But and I'll often think about when will that transition change? That when you go and you talk to somebody, well, do you know who who um who John Wayne is, or Lucille Ball? And they go, John Wayne who? Are you watching Andy Griffin, uh, Leave It to Beaver, the Brady Bunch, and all that
They
stuff.
don't know anything about those. They
But
don't. They don't know anything about those
right,
things.
but I'm saying, and I'm talking about these things that led us up to where we are today. Is what I'm saying. We was
Hmm.
born in that age where we can relate to it. Is what I'm trying to say, because
Yes.
we were there. Is what I'm trying to say, and we still
Exactly.
and we're still young enough, and we can still get up there and even imitate James Brown. Some of us, without having to call 911.
I was going to say
Some of
you
us,
can James Brown if you want
yeah. But see, I can remember what Bill Cosby said. He said, "I want to see Hammer do Hammer when he's 60." He said,
He did say it.
"Yeah, yeah, I want to see Hammer when about 30 years from now. I want to see him go. It's Hammer time." Be like, "No, it's Geritol time."
Okay.
Yeah.
But aging is it's a privilege.
Oh
Aging
yeah.
is a privilege, and it's a blessing. And I think that you know I would like to see generally our attitudes change about aging,
Well,
because a lot
l-
of us are still hung up
l-
on
well, let
trying to
me.
recapture youth and all of that, and
What?
we shouldn't be.
Well, Sharon, let me tell you this. That's a hopeless case unless you living in one of the Asians country, cause they cherish here. It's like a curse. Our
Yeah.
culture, our society is so different, and we don't, unless you're a family member who really loves your loved one. But the overall, when it comes to how our culture is made, and the idea of money
Hmm.
and what they market and everything, is that you need to be youthful and strong and all this other stuff. Otherwise, you need to be put out the pasture. That's our culture,
Exactly.
for whatever
That's
reason.
so
Despite all the wisdom and all the things that you've gone to and all the stuff that you can bring to the table, it's just like, no, 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 get out of the way. You're old. You'll waste.
Yeah.
That's and that's our culture. And then for a lot of us who are not connected mentally and emotionally to understand the beauty of the day that is given, you can get caught up into that. Because
Hmm.
now you be sitting up there and you be thinking about, oh, I'm old, and now you play into the role of it. And then they're saying
Hmm.
you're only as old as what you feel. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who I called, and we were talking about this age thing, because I didn't know I was as old as I was until I went home. Till I went home about 2 months ago to a friend of mine's funeral, right? So mind you, you have your everyday life. So I go home to the funeral, and I see my classmates, and I'm like, oh Lord Jesus, am I in that class right there? They coming up. Some of them got canes. Some of them looking like they about to fall out. Some of them got stuff, and I'm looking like, is is that where I'm at? Because it's like, oh my God. I guess that's
Hmm.
because you don't see yourself like that. That's not the world that you involve with every day until I'm looking at,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, I guess I am in that category. But I didn't know it till I went home. Kind of scared me
I
for a
know the
minute.
feeling. Yeah, I know the feeling. We celebrated our 50th high school reunion,
Hmm.
50th anniversary of our graduation. last year,
Okay.
last summer,
Okay.
last summer in August, class of 1973. I was going to tell you, I've been an AARP card holder for quite some time. But I can relate to what you're saying because when you're moving about in your daily life, you don't really, age ain't nothing but a number.
Right. Mhm.
But then you get around folks and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, I guess I am
Mhm.
60, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Be like, oh, okay, all right. Be like, oh, you'd be like, oh, yeah. So let's talk about this book. Where did this idea come from? Tell me where did it start? What's the idea? How did this thing came to be in the mind and say, you
Okay.
know what? I want to go ahead and I want to write this book. How did that come to be? Where did that idea
Really,
come from?
I tell you, Charles, I noticed that my mother was suffering a marked memory loss. Not just little things, little daily things, but just my mother was excellent with numbers. She could remember phone numbers, birth dates, addresses, names. She was just brilliant. She was actually the first black and female um, treasurer at a high school in our school district. Okay, first ever. And she was just brilliant. When she met my dad, she was taking sophomore classes at college, and she was 15 years old. So she was really quite brilliant. And I started noticing, that she was losing track of time and her memory was fading. And I thought, I'll write a book and I will call it For Mama, for when she forgets who she is. I thought that the stories would help her to remember who she was. And the disease progressed so quickly um, that my family really had to focus on the quality of life for her, especially those still living in, everybody lives in Virginia except me, by the way.
Mhm.
So, we all had to come together and think about the quality of her life. So the book kind of went by the wayside. And like I said, the disease of dementia
Mhm.
progressed so quickly that the book became For Mama Who Forgot Who She Was because
Mhm.
she passed away almost 2 years ago
Mhm.
from dementia and stroke. And I had not finished the book until just a few short weeks ago. I think I actually hit publish. I published it on March 27th, which would have been her 83rd birthday.
Mhm.
80, no, I'm sorry, 85th birthday. So it became a tribute to her, but also something that I wanted to use to raise awareness because our people, we're focused on high blood pressure and diabetes, when in reality, about 14% of Black people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's
Mhm.
versus maybe 10% of white people. Okay.
Mhm.
And, uh, additionally, women, Black women suffer more from dementia and brain disease than men. So it was incumbent upon me. I felt that I needed to honor my mom, talk about who she really was. But it's a quick read. Here's the book.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but
Yeah.
anyway, this is it. It has a picture of her on the front. It's a quick read. It's 10, a collection of 10 stories. Um, and it appears that it's a quick read, but if you go back and reread, there are lessons that she left, little nuggets are left in each of the stories. And then in the back of the book, I put some information about the signs for early detection, signs of Alzheimer's or dementia, and where to go to get help.
Well, it's funny, but
Yeah.
it's when you bring awareness, because I have another friend who's very passionate, which is something different but yet the same. Um, and I wanted her to come on to talk about it, and that is, and she wants to talk about sickle cell, because people are
Oh yeah.
unaware of us,
Hmm.
people of color, in sickle cell, and she's sharing the same passion, talking about the same thing in the sense of us being so unaware of how that
Hmm.
affects us, because you, people of color, for whatever reason, I know why. Um, there's something in our culture that keeps us in this place. I call it a spirit that is there to deceive you on because food, and somebody was saying this to me, is a comfort zone for us. Like
Hmm.
like a lot of times it's a comfort zone, and a lot of times for us, if we having this conversation, that's where we go sometimes, a lot of times, to find peace and comfort in the food.
Hmm.
And for different reasons, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all we're in different places for different reasons that we do these things.
Hmm.
Um, w- Working with Angela Adams, who for 20 years, and we're trying to get this thing to come back about the Black Men's Health Summit.
Hmm.
I talk with Angela all the time, and I work with every summit except the first one. So I work with her 19 out of the 20 years, and
Wow.
we still talk about it. And talking with Dr. Woods, who's always one of the speakers there, and he's very adamant about this, man. I mean, if he'll get on his soapbox, and he'll go for 45 minutes, and the first thing he'll say is, "We're suffering and dying from these man-made diseases. They're man-made." Based, and what he's saying is based on who we are and where we are and what we eat. And he talks about the the white rice. He talks about the white bread. He talks about the sugar. He talks about all these things that we eat. And just having this conversation that we're into this processed food, and the body has no idea what to do with it. The body is rejecting it the entire time that we don't know. So it's storing all this stuff because it's processed. And when you say to people, like, you need to eat something that comes from the ground. So if you're eating something and you pick up the box or the can or whatever it comes in, and you're sitting there and you can't even pronounce the words, it's got all these big, whatever it is, and it's not coming from the earth, and your body is meant to absorb what comes from the earth. But then when you start talking about taking away the food, they look at you like, "I'll slap you upside your head. You better get away from
Yeah.
me."
Yeah.
And
We are set in our ways, and I do. I understand that there is a level of distrust in our culture for studies and things of that nature. But when it comes to um, physical health and mental health,
Mhm,
brain diseases such as Alzheimer's, dementia, stroke, food does play a huge part. What we put in is often not what we need to, and we do need to address those things. I think there's something to be said for plant based eating. When I started researching, and I am by no means a vegan, I love my fish, okay?
mhm,
But when I started doing some research, it's been suggested that some of these foods that we have incorporated into our daily lives, um, are responsible
mhm,
for the progression of a lot of these diseases.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so and I just, like I said, I wrote the book to one, honor my mother, to talk about who she really was because she was amazing and she did overcome a lot. Um, as I said in in the book, everything except dementia. She overcame everything except dementia. And I know that, when I talk to people about it, everybody that I know, everyone that I've spoken with, whether they're a friend or a family member or acquaintance, a coworker, everyone knows someone who has suffered some level of dementia and or Alzheimer's. And I also spoke with physicians who agree that old age does not come with memory loss doesn't come with old age. It doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
We are, we think that, well, it's just a sign of age that we're.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily true. I've gotten that from physicians that say they know, and you probably know 90-year-old people. My dad's pretty good at 92, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it doesn't have to come. Memory loss doesn't have to come with old age, but we do need to raise awareness that we're suffering from it disproportionately. No, no news there. But we also need to encourage folks to participate in studies so that we can. I mean, there are some very well known black neurologists. There's one here in town, a black female, Dr. Fletcher. I have no relationship, but you know, there are some studies being done by black physicians and neurologists and therapists that we can find studies and participate in them so that we can figure out how to best treat us. I read an article in AARP recently, and I question marks went up because the just the sound of the article, it sounded like they didn't consider us black men or women at all. Um, it was talking about these inroads that they've made with these drugs, and I thought, you know, that's kind of that's interesting and that's good for them. But what about us? What about us? So
Yeah,
that's why that's why,
right,
and
and
that's
see,
how it came about.
right, and see, that's what I have learned in these few years that I've been here on Earth. I've said this so many times on this show, um, and I know it. I can't say it enough, and I don't know if I can really emphasize what it really means. And that is that coming up, we were taught right and wrong at a very young age. It wasn't difficult,
Hmm.
like in kindergarten. You knew what was right and what was wrong.
Hmm.
And so when you come from a family who I like to think is grounded and understand from a spiritual standpoint what is said to be right and wrong, and then you go out into the world,
Hmm.
well, it can be extremely confusing because it works like this. You're dealing with something and you see it. It's plain as day, and you know what's right and what's wrong. But what mom didn't teach you, one of the most important part of it is that there's right and wrong, but there's people who only know what's right for them. And
Hmm.
that's the part where because a lot of times it was confusing, like that's wrong. But the world and its reality doesn't deal a lot in that way. The world deals in what's in the best interest of self. And the
Hmm.
learning that from the politicians and the parties, and the party does not do what's right for the people. The party does what's right for them and the seat that
Hmm.
they set in. And because they understand the ignorance of the world, it only benefits them and give them more power. And so that's the
Exactly.
lesson you have to learn, because you be like, wait a minute, and like I have worked with the Democrats, because I mean I'm not saying Democrat or Republicans. I'm just saying I've been hired to come and videotape. So I'm there at the Democratic Black Caucus, and I'm not there. I don't have so I'm there just listening, doing my job. They're paying me to come out, do what I do, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to what they're talking about. And I'm like, wait a minute. You say you got to fight for what? And this is on the agenda. This is on the agenda. And they're trying to do what? And you standing there through your ignorance, not understanding just how this world works. Wait a minute, you got to fight for that, really? And then these people that's doing that don't see nothing wrong with their evil, wicked ways, and you sitting there like this, art? You really got to fight for that. They really trying to do that, yeah. And like, Mama didn't teach you that. Mama taught you,
I
Mama taught you right from wrong, but she, it didn't teach you to be ready for the world and the ways of the world, you know. And it's a lesson
I,
that's, I mean, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I I think we have similar backgrounds. I grew up the oldest of five, and my mother, again, I can't stress how brilliant my mother was. And my father, I can't take anything away from him either. He fought for this country in the Korean War. He almost lost his life over there. His appendix burst, while he was out there fighting for this country that did not welcome him back, you know. And in spite of all of the obstacles that they faced, my parents, were together for 67 years. They were business owners. My mother was one of two black female business owners on the main street in our town. The other one owned a print shop and went on to become a senator, state senator. So, I had examples. I had really good examples to watch. That my parents were always civically involved. They were always involved in the church, always involved in the community. Um, and when I had my daughter and didn't see a play group, I put one together because I saw my father in our neighborhood put together ball teams, little league teams. No
Hmm.
one for my brothers to play ball with. No team for them to get on. My father made a team, and that's what they did. They made something. You said something about Kool-Aid on a flyer. I was listening to you. um, I remember when one summer, and I must have been maybe 5 or 6 years old. My sister might have been four, 3 or 4. I remember these women, because the men were off at the shipyard working. And I remember these women jumping on the fire hydrant to open the hose so that we could have water, just free flowing water. And then they said, okay, kids, we're going to have a day at the beach. Somebody brought the Kool-Aid, somebody brought the bologna sandwiches, and somebody brought the butter cookies. But that was the whole neighborhood, banding together to have a play date, a beach day for the kids. And I just, these are examples that I grew up with, and that's what I look for in our community these days. And I don't really see it. Um,
Well, that was, I
yeah.
just recently spoke to some kids. I work with the school called Workforce Academy.
Hmm.
It's an alternative school. And that was one of the questions that I asked. This I spoke to them about maybe about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I asked a question. I said, "What do you think is the difference between my generation and your generation?" And we've been singing this song for a very long time. Us, our generation to this whatever generation this is. I don't, whatever you want to call it.
Gen Z, Gen X, I don't know.
I don't know what you. I don't know, but and we was having a very civil, nice conversation, and they seemed to not reject anything that I was saying. They were listening. And I said the real true difference between my generation and your generation, and I even asked them, I said, do you know your neighbors the next block over? And of course they said no. I said, do you know your neighbors 3 blocks over? They go, no. I said, did you know that my teacher could discipline me when I was in school? They looked at me like, yeah. And I said, do you understood why and how this thing was handled? and the importance in it. And I said I couldn't dare come and ask my mom to come deal with me in school because first of all, she gonna look at me like, wait a minute, I gotta take off work to come deal with your foolishness. Oh,
That part.
I gotta come deal, and then she gonna ask me, wait a minute, whoa. Why the teacher gotta call you up in the first place? Okay, what you doing down in the dean's office in the first place? Why you giving this teacher this problem versus the parent sitting there going, "You're my child," and this. There's no way in the world because if the teacher, heavens forbid, made a phone call to the house, like, wait a minute, excuse me, wait a minute, he did what? Oh, did he? Don't worry about that. And then I told him, I said, let me explain something to you. I said it was very common, and I want you to hear me very closely, that if the parent came to the school and had that conversation right there in front of everybody, parent called you up right in front of the whole class and took out the belt in front of everybody. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Nobody was sitting there going woo, cause everybody in there know that they could be next.
That's right.
And they
That is
looking at me
correct.
like, really? I go like, yeah, yeah. And then not only that, your neighbor 2 or 3 blocks over call you out, discipline you, and
Mm-hmm.
then sent you home and say, hey, you know what? I just saw Charles, blah, 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 and I took that switch for him and I just sent him home. You did. Now you got to get it again. And the point that I was trying to make to them was the village. And
Yes.
everybody had their best interest, had your best interest at heart. It wasn't about what they think they're hearing. It was about the village and understanding that these people love you and cared about your best interests at heart and that they looked out for you because they cared and there was love in that
Mm-hmm.
village, you know,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
you had fear, like, oh, ooh, and you was respectful, because one thing I was also raised by my aunt, and I never will forget my aunt. She'll see you in the morning. She look at you. She said, "I didn't wake up with you. You don't know how to say good morning." Oh, good morning, Aunt Lulu. Okay, good morning.
Yes.
And that's how it was. They're like, "Oh, but no,
Mhm.
I did not wake up with you. You don't know how to say good morning to me?" Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Aunt Lulu. Good
Well,
morning.
I will give you that. Things are definitely different. Um, and I don't know that our generation had everything right.
Oh,
You
well,
know,
no, 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 no,
you
no,
know,
no, no.
but
It's no. It's
I
not about
also,
being right.
no,
No.
it's not. But I do think that there are some um, points that we made and some things that as a result of the way we were raised, um, I think things could actually be a whole lot worse if we hadn't been taught the things that we were taught. Today, everybody's kind of single-minded. That village thing, even though it was popular when Hillary Clinton said it takes a village, um, it should have been popular when Kat Gordon said it,
Hmm.
or it should be popular now that Naomi Joy is saying it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Well,
I just think I
I
think
just
it's up
think,
to us to get back in there,
right,
the way that we were. I think we've over assimilated
right.
in a lot of areas.
But see, I want to get back to your mom, and I want to get back to the book.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in in your research and the things that you have found, because I know it has to be tough because I have talked with people over the years, and I don't know to the degree and what you went through. Um, but I can say this right here: it's so sad, it brings tears to my eyes because as you were taken care of and looked after as a child, and then the way life works in that cycle, that now they're back in the child state of mind, whereas now it's
Mhm.
time for you to take care of them. And so many times,
Mhm.
Sharon, that don't happen with our elderly, and
Yeah.
they're made to suffer. They're suffering whether or not they haven't been
Mhm.
bathed, they haven't been fed,
Mhm.
they have sores on
Mhm.
them. And the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Um, we just had conversations that I do with the pastors roundtable because we were talking about a situation where somebody is taking advantage of this 90 plus year old lady, and somebody said to me, Charles, the focus need to be on the elderly. Are we doing a good job of taking care of the elderly? Don't focus on this person over here. What are we doing to look out for the elderly? And so that is what the topic was among the pastors roundtable. What's the duties
Mhm.
of the church to look after its 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 elders? How is the
Well, I'm
church?
gonna jump in
Okay,
here.
yeah,
I'm gonna jump in here. Years and years and years ago, before I came to Florida, I worked for United Way. I
okay,
worked for United Way for about 9 years as a bookkeeper. You know, I had several agencies that I took good care of their books, and I used to be mad going to work every day because I felt that the work that the United Way was attempting to do should have been taken care of by our churches.
mm,
That's what I thought. And I still think that if churches were doing the real work that I feel they're appointed to do, then there would be no need for these agencies.
but that was
And I,
that was the topic of conversation, and why? Because we were
yeah,
talking about it failing the elderly. That's why it was brought
yeah,
up, and the pastors on
yeah,
there, you know, because we was talking about, well, what the scripture say. So when you go through
hmm,
Timothy's, talking about setting up the church and the duties of deacons and so on and so forth. So we talked about the failure, and then it's a
hmm,
slippery slope because we talked about, it's tough getting past the family members that's abusing the elder, because you see it, because there was somebody on there talking about. I saw it in my church. I went to the family members
yeah,
like, hey, what y'all doing to y'all, grandmother? I'm sitting here looking, y'all in
hmm,
church, but yet I'm looking, I'm seeing this. You know, y'all
hmm.
being trifling.
Well, the
So
main thing, I'm sorry, but the main thing, the best thing is that you said something because a lot of us won't say anything. But let me get back to my mom.
okay,
My mom was the person that took care of everything. When my
okay,
father, I mean, his promotions that he got, he retired from the army, then he retired from civil service, and all of his promotions, my mother made sure that he got because he kept him in line, kept his stuff up to date, his resume, everything. But whatever, the property that they bought, my mother was the motor in our family. So when she started failing, it was they were in denial. They were all back home in Virginia in denial. I was not because I live here in Florida. I could tell the difference in her just from I called her every day. We talked every day, sometimes two, three, four times a day. So I knew the difference in our conversation. And I knew the difference in her thinking and her understanding. And even though it took, it was years that the disease kind of settled in on her, the last 3 years are when things just went, it was like wildfire and it took over at such a rapid rate. It was scary. My sister became the caregiver. And she is the first dedication that I give in this book because she did indeed, she gave our mother a mother's care. And she has a son. She has an adult son. I have an adult daughter. And she gave my mother a mother's care. And I'm forever grateful for that.
that's hard.
At the same time, um, there were things that we just could not control. I mean, even those who were there in the house could not control. Um, things that my mother was doing, and it got to the point where we had to put child safety. I went home so many times just flying back and forth, but my daughter, her husband, my sister, her son, my brothers, we all got together and decided that we're going to have to put safety locks on. We're going to have to, set her medicines up for her. We're going to have to. I was in constant contact with her doctor, um, just to try to get a handle on
Mhm.
what was going on, what was happening next. And when the decline was at a point where I knew she wasn't ever coming back, I tell people this too. My mother left long before the breath left her body,
Mhm.
okay? Because the person that she was no more.
Mhm.
Um, she had
That
moments of clarity,
that has to be
but there
tough.
were,
Yeah, that
yeah,
has to
it
be
was.
tough.
It was
It's yeah,
very
it's
tough.
yeah, that's
It was
hard.
very, very tough. And I will tell you that even writing the book, um, that last year, um, after she passed, I ended up, and I have no shame in saying this, I ended up going back into therapy because I couldn't get past my depression, and I certainly couldn't separate the depression and the grief. And so it took me a year, a little bit more than a year, to get this book out and over with after my mom passed. Because I started having doubts. It's not good enough. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to read it. It's not going to make a difference. But, I kept telling myself these things. And through therapy, regained my confidence, number one. But I also got an understanding that grief comes differently for different people. Um, Depression is something that can be dealt with, and that the best thing you can do is face what's going on. If you can't face it, then you certainly can't fix it. So, I was really, when I talk about this book, doing this book and dedicating it to my mom and my sister who cared for her, I want caregivers, I want family members, I want those who are suffering from brain disease of any kind. Um, I want them to know they're not alone, and I want them to know that it's okay, however they're feeling is okay, and that there is help out here for them. I recently, in the last couple of years, I became a Christian mental health coach. I'm not a counselor, but my role as a coach is to bridge the gap between clergy and mental health professionals. Um, you know,
Yeah, but see,
without,
Sharon,
yeah,
I'm on the outside and I'm listening to you, right?
okay,
So, and I'm telling you, y- there's work, there's work for you because it's so needed,
okay, hmm
and there's so many people who need you, and I'm telling you, there are people that need you. A lot of us don't know how to deal with this. I'm not going to get into this part of our inability to understand the blessing of today. We don't really
hmm
understand the blessing of today until you go through
right,
something like this. And
right,
now you're you're struggling, rightfully so, because it's kind of like when my father was about 2 or 3 weeks from him passing away. And he was bedridden for like the last maybe 8 years of his life. But he was
mm,
in that mode. He was in that transitioning mode.
hmm
And I would go see him once a week for a period of a long time. I would go see him, blah blah blah. And one day I was standing there, and he turned around and he looked at me. He said, "Charles," I go like, "What? What happened to the good old days?" because now he was reflecting and he was remembering when things were just so simple.
Mhm.
Because I say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I don't know how to put it into words, but Sharon, I don't take my sight for granted. I don't take the fact that I can walk for granted. I don't take the fact that I could hear for granted. I don't take the fact that I can remember all of my kindergarten teachers on up through high school teachers. I don't take none of that for granted. The
You're
food,
preaching now. Go ahead.
the the food I eat, the gas in my car, and people ask me
Mhm.
how I'm doing. You know what I tell them? I said my lights are on and there's gas in my car. I guess I must be doing okay. Cause I
I'm
don't,
blessed and highly favored.
so I don't take any of that for granted. And a lesson that I learned kind of at a young age when I was going through something real tragic in my life. I mean, it was really tragic at the time. A lot of people didn't know that I was going through what I was going through. But I was working over at Channel 6, the CBS affiliate here. And one of my duties and one of the things that I was doing working in the news department was every day I had to record. If you go by Channel 6, you see these big satellite dishes out, It may be different now because that was so long ago. They may do it differently. But they was calling what they call the satellites. They call them the birds that's in the sky. My job was to put tapes in all these different machines and record what was going on around the world. Okay, you will understand this because you worked in this industry.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the news director will look at all these different countries and decide what they want to cover for the news for the day. That's their decision. There's a lot going on. We're gonna cover this, we're gonna cover that, we're gonna do this.
Mhm.
So all day long you recording what's going on around the world. And when I looked at my little problems and I looked at what was going on around the world, I was like, oh,
Mhm.
I need to sit down and shut up.
Shut up. I can relate. I can totally relate to that.
So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at what's going on around the world and I got my
Mhm.
issues and I'm all down in the dumps. I'd be like, oh, I'm living in high cotton.
Mhm. That's
So
the expression, and that, yeah, yes,
it
indeed.
gave me a total different perspective. And I've just always been appreciative of the little things that we take for granted. And
Mhm.
so when my dad said, "What happened to the good old days?" I knew exactly what he was talking about. My dad hadn't been able to
Mhm.
walk for years. Now he's at that transitioning stage and he was reflecting.
Mhm.
And so I can tell you, I've been around long enough to know that there's a lot of people like your mother that don't have people like you and your siblings. There's a lot
Mhm.
of people that's not in place with your spirit to serve and to be there for their parents. And
Yeah.
you will be blessed by that. You you may
Oh,
not no no but no no no. The reason why I'm saying this like this right here because a lot of people don't understand what I'm about to say. Because they will provide the service and they will be there, but they don't understand the overall and how it comes back. It may not come back to you, but it may come back to your daughter.
mhm.
It may come in some way, but people don't
Mhm.
understand that, and that's how that works. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're not doing it because you're looking for a cookie.
Right.
You're doing what you're supposed to do. That's your
Right.
mother. And
Mhm.
you will look after your brother, you will look after your sister because that's what it's supposed to be. And that's one of the reasons why I say in this culture, in this country, when you start to get old because they want to throw you out the pasture,
Mhm.
you know, because that's just how we are. They want to see how much money they can make off of you, off of medicine and services and da da da. How can we bring in the money?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, They want to put you out the pasture though.
Definitely, they have no more use for you.
Right.
And that to me is very sad. I've been to a couple of other countries, and they don't treat their elderly
No.
like that.
No.
Their
No.
elderly people are lifted up and held up high and in high esteem, and they're respected and cared for and loved. And and I think we do a poor job in this country. Like you said, we're focused on, but I'm going to go back even, and I may say something a little controversial here, but to me, that is a direct result of over assimilation
Hmm.
because back in our villages that we were torn from, we cared for our elderly,
Hmm.
our griots,
Hmm.
our soothsayers, our healers, we cared for them back in our villages. Um, it's when we got here. And I do understand that there may have been a little bit of let's go along to get along kind of thing going on, but and even I drank the Kool-Aid for a long time. I was using a Revlon realistic perm for my hair, trying to look like them, you
Do
know.
a do not get me started on that because that's a whole nother show.
Yeah,
Do not get me started on that.
but I'm just saying, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about it. I feel like we took on some of their thoughts and characteristics and practices that we should have just left alone. Um, and I think caring for our elderly is one of the main areas where we just lost it. And we need to get it back. We really need to get it back. And it's not just, you know, I heard you talking about the village, how you got chastised by one person in the neighborhood and they told your parents and your parents got you the second time and don't come let me come up to school behind you and your crazy the craziness that you're doing. All of that. We've lost so much of that and I
Mhm.
think we need to really get it back. I think that those are aspects of our um, evolution, if you will, that have been torn away. And, this
Yeah.
generation, call it X, Z, or whatever, they have technology to depend on. There's no human contact. There's no
Hmm.
reverence for humanity. Um, they
Right.
could care less. And
Right.
I think we care. We
Right.
absolutely cared, and we still do care. And I just think that those of us who have a voice, should speak for the voiceless, and we should continue to engage any of these youngsters who will listen to us.
Right.
I I have a platform called Women of a Certain Age. I engage with women who are 95 plus and women who are 17 years old. I've
Okay.
learned from a 17-year-old. So I think that we need to really kind of focus on connecting again with each other and really listening and imparting wisdom and also recognizing, like myself, recognizing that there are contributions that these young folks can make towards my development.
Well,
So
yes, of course, and we can
yeah,
all,
so
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, we
think
can all
that's where
learn
we're
from each
going
other, and
exactly, and I think that
it takes patience and understanding that we're all on this journey together, and we all have
absolutely,
something to contribute. We can all learn from each other, and
absolutely.
that real quick, I'm going to let you tell us about your book signing real quick, and let you
Oh yeah,
yeah, let you finish up. But I will say this right here, real quick. I've been saying this here for years. That is this right here. That it has come to a place in where they come in and they try to tell you how to raise your child. Okay, but this is what I find amazing, and I know why it's this way. It's so funny that you can't do this, you can't do that, but as soon as your child is out there acting up the same way that they're acting in your home, somehow or another you can tase them, beat them with a club, and you can shoot them.
that part.
Yeah. But if they act that way in my house, no, but if they act that way out in the street with you, somehow or another, you got the right to all of us. But that's a whole nother show. But anyway, here we
It's a
go.
whole
Here we go. Here we go. Right here. Tell us about this date right here.
okay. On Saturday, first of all, I don't know if you're aware, but there are only three black-owned bookstores, three in the state of Florida.
Okay.
One of them is virtual, and then there are two brick and mortar. And I decided that I wanted to have my very first book signing at Dare Books, which is one of the two brick and mortars in the state of Florida, owned and operated by a dear Mr. Desmond Reed. And so on Saturday, April 27th, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., I will be there at Dare Book. It's located in Longwood, Florida. The address is 245 North US Highway 1792. And I'll be there from 3 to 5 with refreshments and with books. I'm going to talk a little bit about dementia and brain disease and mental health and invite some audience questions and do a little bit of reading from my book and hopefully bring awareness about the 14% of Black people age 65 with Alzheimer's versus
Okay.
10% of white.
Okay. Well,
So
y-
please join me.
okay. Okay. You know what I would like to do?
What would you like to do?
I would like for you to come back and to talk more about that, to give us to educate us a little bit more about that. So
Absolutely,
when
I'd love to do that.
okay, so when you find a time, you have my phone number.
Yes,
I might be playing me and Mrs. Jones in the background, but
I love it. I love it.
but seriously, I really would like for you to come back and to give us some more And actually, you know what? I might make it a dual show because my friend who talks about sickle cell among people of
Yeah,
color, and then
yeah.
you because it's our not knowing
Hmm.
and how it affects us, the people of color,
Yeah.
because we go about, and I'll see if I can find have her come on the show as well, and have you come on, and then
Okay.
we can talk about it, and then we might be able to educate some people, and then put that
I would
word,
love.
put it out there. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna see if I can come out there on Saturday and take a few pictures and post it on Facebook as well. I
I
might.
would love it.
Oh,
I would love it, and I would love to come back and help educate and just bring the knowledge so that because what did Maya Angelou say? When you know better, you can do better.
that is very true. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the Journey 2020, especially at such short notice. I really appreciate that. So
Thank
again,
you very much for having me.
all right, this is Miss Sharon Fletcher Jones. All right, all right.
Peace
Well,
and blessings. Peace and blessings.
all right. You can find her, like you said, on the 27th in Longwood. And, for people, for questions, comments, or concerns, you guys can always hit us up with an email. As I always say here on the Journey 2020, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. Everybody, enjoy the rest of the week. You be blessed.